I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is the TechCentral Show. TCS is brought to you by MTN Business. Please visit them at mtnbusiness.co.za for more information about their products and services. And we thank them for partnering with the show to bring you these great interviews. A reminder that you can subscribe to TCS at youtube.com/TechCentral or simply search TechCentral, one word, in your favorite podcasting app, and you'll find all of our shows there. Now, I'm very excited about introducing today's guest. He's joining us from a war zone, Kyiv in the Ukraine, where he relocated, I think about 6 or 7 years ago. He'll correct me if I'm wrong there. And who has now found himself caught up in the biggest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. Ronnie Apteker, South African internet pioneer, filmmaker, and entrepreneur. I wish we could say we're doing this under better circumstances, Ronnie, but the reality is your life has been upended in the last 2.5 years. How are you?
Thanks, Duncan, and thanks for having me on your show. I'm alive.
That's a good start.
The electricity just came back on a few moments ago, and there hasn't been an air raid siren since this morning. So let's hope that me and you can have a chat without me having to head to the bomb shelter. If it's okay, I don't mean to be like a school teacher, but you mentioned the Ukraine. It's just Ukraine.
Just Ukraine.
It's just Ukraine.
Okay. Where does the come from?
The is probably one of the origins of this war.
Okay.
Because it's not an area, it's a country. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the world confuse the two, especially before the full-scale invasion. If Ukraine was ever mentioned, people would often say, oh, Russia. So, no, not Russia.
Not Russia.
Ukraine. Mm-hmm. It's a different, that's why there's a war. Yeah. It's a different country with a different language and a different culture and a different set of values, mm-hmm. clearly. But unfortunately, there is this full-scale invasion, and it's turned everybody's lives upside down in the last 2.5 years. In theory, the war began in 2014. Russia annexed Crimea, mm-hmm. but the world didn't really respond too much, and somehow Ukrainians kind of just accepted that, and life went on. Like it was kind of contained to, part of the country, more the east, and of course Crimea got annexed. But then in February 2022, on the 24th, when I was sleeping at 5 a.m, bombs fell out of the sky all over the country, and the building was shaking. This is where I'm sitting now, shaking. Mm. And to say that we in our pants was like an understatement. Mm. I've been through some trauma in life, but this is a whole other kind of trauma. And it's very sad, Duncan. It's very sad. Ukraine was no threat to anyone. Mm. They were growing at quite a pace. Everyone who came to Kyiv said that this city was on track to be the hotspot of Europe within a few years. They kept calling it the next Berlin. And I know that your media company is called TechCentral. Mm-hmm. This is TechCentral. Mm-hmm. And Kyiv and Ukraine are the tech hub of Europe, And a lot of people wouldn't know anything about that. But they are. And so much is built here. So many apps that we use come from Ukraine. Yeah. You just don't know they came from Ukraine. They were built in Ukraine.
There's an incredible tech talent base in Kyiv, isn't there?
All over the country. It were, my understanding is like Ukraine was like the brains trust of the Soviet Union. And when people ask what the war's about, like Russia's the jealous ex-boyfriend, and they want the girlfriend back. Mm-hmm. But the girlfriend has developed with all the problems of corruption and bureaucracy and Soviet legacy mentality. The country's got lots of problems. Mm. I come from SA. I mean, about load shedding. I should be well prepared for the load shedding. What I'm not well prepared for is load shedding and missile strikes at the same time.
At least we don't have those here.
But yeah. Well, Duncan, I assume we can talk openly.
Of course.
I love South Africa. I've met many soulful people there, people like you, and South Africa has given me everything. Friends and family there. I mean, less and less. One is we're getting older. People pass on. But two, a lot of people, as you know, leave South Africa, which is sad and worrying. You know, there's that term, the brain drain. And now there's that here as well because of the war. So many people have lost their homes, left the country, been displaced. And there's a huge outflow of talent. And the labor force, Ukraine is a big, like working country. People make things here, you know, manufacturing and heavy industry. If I'm not mistaken, Ukraine is the biggest steel, iron ore producer in Europe. It's the fourth largest food producer in the world. You know, if you're wondering why food prices keep going up and up and up, a lot of it has to do with the war here. You know, I know that Ukraine, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, those are opinions. They also are facts. You look on Google, I think Google facts are pretty good, you know, quick facts. But I think Ukraine is responsible for 70%, for example, of Egypt's food supply. So significant, and many countries. Like I think there's 30 odd countries in North Africa, Asia, Middle East, you know, that rely on the staples from Ukraine. I know that like Ukraine produces 3/4 of the world's sunflower cooking oil. So when fast food prices keep going up, because there's problems here, you know. So people might not know of Ukraine, but they can see the effects of what it means to damage and destroy and destabilize a big producer to food in the world, to IT skills, to creative skills. Is, you know, Ukraine makes rockets and airplanes, you know. Not many countries make aircraft. You need a whole range of talents and skills to make an aircraft. The world's biggest aircraft, the Antonov, the one that blew up.
Destroyed.
There's more Antonovs, but that massive one, the huge one, I think it's called the Mirai.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. That one was blown up at the beginning of the war. That was the world's biggest plane. And I'm sure it was featured in a couple of Hollywood movies, that big monster plane. But you need a certain kind of talent to produce airplanes, you know. So Ukraine is like, yeah, smart people. And also very funny people. So, but we'll get into that.
So, Ronnie, for those who don't know the story, I mean, you're famous in South Africa for being an internet pioneer, for founding or co-founding Internet Solutions back in the early 1990s. You then went on to a career of producing and making movies. You had a stint as a stand-up comedian. You've been an entrepreneur. You've had a storied career, but I don't think a lot of people know how you ended up in Ukraine. And what's the backstory there? Why are you in Kiev?
Well, you said it perfectly there. So, and I hope if anyone says to you later in the day, tomorrow, the Ukraine, no, it's Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Yes. You know, that's why. That's part of the reason there's this war, because it's not some area of Russia. It's a sovereign nation. You know? Well, that's this is going to sound a bit odd, and it's not because I've suddenly. I'm still the same person. I'm a nerdy guy with a sense of humor that's always been a bit of a workaholic. I'm not like a very money-orientated person. I've been lucky enough in life to have, you know, come into some money. I've seen money come in. I've seen money go out. You know,
mostly through movies.
Yeah, well, you know, they say, how do you make a small fortune? I know it from people who have wine farms, and it's the same story. Like you start off with how do you make money in a wine farm? You know, you start off with how does it go?
How do you make a fortune?
How do you make a small fortune? How do you make a small fortune in the wine industry? Same in the film. You start with a big fortune.
Exactly.
You know, so the vacuum cleaner industry, as I often refer to it, it's like kind of like everything has been sucked up. Well, not everything, but sure. But it's not. You know me long enough. It's never been about the money. Like the fact that we try and tell stories and in films, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. It's like when you put your heart into something and it doesn't work. Sometimes for legitimate reasons. When you look back at a film, you know, everything in life, Duncan, me and you have been around. Like everything in life is about perspective. So when you look at something right now, we don't always understand it. But if you look at it years later, you can reflect and say, "Wow, that film was really crap." were we smoking a lot of weed or something, So we've made some mistakes as well. And, now I can, I've always been able to laugh at myself. And now we can laugh at them. But I remember you generously gave us some time on Material, which was quite a milestone.
Great
it was
movie.
like a turning point film. Not only was it a beautiful piece of work, but it actually marked the start of more purposeful project, which is interesting considering the first film project I was involved in was called Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But the films after that, for the last 11 or 12 years, at the halfway mark, basically, had a lot of social relevance and did a lot of good. But not all of them, unfortunately, found a home. And some of them have never been seen. And it hurts, like you do all this work, you take a risk, time and money, of course. But that's the nature of all creation. Mm-hmm. Whether you're creating software, writing a book, and Duncan, you know this. You know this as a creative person yourself. You are writing. You can write something and maybe it lands and maybe it doesn't land. But we keep trying, Sometimes it takes us a short time. Sometimes it takes us a lifetime. Sometimes we spend a small amount of money. Sometimes we spend too much money. And we can't ever predict what's going to land and, what's going to find an audience and what doesn't. Sometimes even good creativity does not find an audience. It's often about luck, But Duncan, I was trying to say, Duncan, but this is going to sound a bit strange, but I've had a real kind of breakdown since before the war started, and it's been traumatic. And like you mentioned things that I know that you are correct. Co-founding Internet Solutions and lots of projects, but I honestly don't remember any of it.
Really?
I mean, not that I'm being funny. I don't want to be silly. I can't relate to it.
Really?
So I just don't know what I've been through in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's not something we really it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me suddenly special or better or whatever it is, but it's changed everything and everyone. My values have been challenged and my priorities have definitely been shaken up.
Yeah.
Whether we continue to live with those new values when the war one day ends, which at this stage it looks like it's going to go on forever. But I don't know. But there's definitely some good things that happen because of this war. People here have become more community oriented. I know all my neighbors in the building. They were friendly before the war. It's a very friendly place. But now everybody goes out of their way to say, if you need anything, here's my number, call me, When you're in the bomb shelter at 3 a.m, people talk. It might be the end. I mean, no one I know has died in a bomb shelter. You follow the rules, but it's traumatic. And when they knock out missiles, and we're not talking, one shouldn't compare anything, like wars and stuff, but there's conflicts all over the world. The Russians are not playing games. When you're talking about like a hypersonic missile the size of a Putco bus, I mean, this is big firepower. I don't know how many tons it weighs, maybe 2 tons or 20 tons. I don't know. It's huge. When that thing gets knocked out of the sky above the city, when they are able to intercept it, some of the missiles get through. Like 2 weeks ago when they hit the 2 hospitals, I think 30 missiles and I don't know how many drones were sent to Kyiv that Monday, and 4 got through and did a lot of damage. They're damaging the electrical infrastructure. The question is, if they keep attacking the infrastructure, will there be no electricity? I don't know. And can a country function? Again, coming from South Africa, these are questions we've all asked ourselves. So it should be not unfamiliar terrain to me. But South Africa is not a war zone, at least not in the missile sense. South Africa's got a violent crime problem. But so it sounded very beautiful what you're describing, and even, I guess, flattering. But I honestly, like my corporate life and whatever I've been through, I don't know. I can't even relate to it anymore.
Shame.
Just because of this life-changing craziness. And I'm just to be, grounded. I'm not saying I'm a better person.
Sure.
Same person.
Yeah.
But I've been shaken up to the point where just nothing seems the same. But I'm the same guy. I still have my sense of humor.
Yeah.
I still work too much. I still stress too much.
Is leaving an option? Is leaving an option?
Well, Duncan, I don't. I'm in Kyiv every other month.
Okay.
We basically are in Western Poland, me, my wife, and our little boy. And when our little boy was 1.5, about, that's when the war started, we left. Me and 2 other drivers drove, like a few friends drove out of the city. Ooh. Oh, I froze there. Are we back?
Yeah, all good. Do you want to make an authentic?
So a couple of friends of ours drove like in a small convoy. Mm-hmm. It was like a surreal thing. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, it might have been millions of cars were driving out of Ukraine. It took us about a week to get out of the country in the winter. When we got to the Polish border, and we asked people how long they've been waiting. Like some said 3 days, 3 days in the snow in a car with a little baby. Sure. These are things that you don't ever want to live through again. I don't wish on anyone, and they change you, They change you.
What attracted you to I almost said what attracted you to Ukraine in the first place?
You actually asked that just now. It's a very I was rambling on about just previous life stuff. I mean, obviously I remember it, but it just seems all so foreign to me now. The story is quite simple. I have a friend who Jacques, who lives in London. He is also a South African entrepreneur. And he was part of like a Harvard entrepreneur program for entrepreneurs from all around the world. And this was about 17 years ago. And he got like an invitation from a Ukrainian entrepreneur to come to Kyiv. And he said, I'll pick you up at the airport and show you around and introduce you to other entrepreneurs. And I had done some traveling a few years before, and I was always keen to go and see, the city of Kyiv. It's a very beautiful place. It's an extremely beautiful city. I've been lucky enough to do some traveling, and I've been to just about all major Eastern European capitals. Some of them are magnificent, including some Russian cities, like St. Petersburg, which is beautiful. But to me, Kyiv is like kind of the motherlode. Mm-hmm. This is just beautiful on another level, and so unusual and quirky and creative. And it's a spirited place with a real free sense of everything, freedom to talk, freedom to create. There was a real democracy here. They elected a Jewish comedian as the president, who became like a war leader. I mean, it's about as democratic as you can get, The neighbors that decided to invade have had the same crazy leader for over 2 decades. It's not a democracy, It's a dictatorship. Mm-hmm. They can have every election they want. It's nonsense. But anyway, here there is real freedom, and it threatens Russia. To have like the old girlfriend, growing up, democracy, free press, next door. Mm. It's a very dangerous kind of example to the Russian citizens. It threatened the Kremlin to have all these free thinkers next door. Weren't they just a part of us? Weren't they colonized just a while ago? So it created a threat. All the stuff about NATO, Schmate, was all nonsense. Right? There was no threat from Ukraine to Russia. Nobody in Ukraine ever spoke about invading Russia. It doesn't make any sense. It's like David versus Goliath. Why would they do that? Ukraine was making food and software and fashion and films. There wasn't a month that went by before the pandemic. Duncan, we forget the pandemic. Here they don't forget the pandemic. I was at a meeting at a conference on Wednesday, and somebody said, pandemic? Oh, those were good days. Bring them back. Good times. all you need is a few rockets up your tuchus, and you go, geez, pandemic. Wow, that's what some best times
Good
of
old
our
days.
lives. It's all about perspective, geez, bring back the pandemic. Those were much more peaceful times. So my friend got this invitation, and I was already keen to go, and it was just like a no-brainer. We didn't need visas. We both had foreign passports. I'm of a group of South Africans that was first-generation South African. My parents were foreigners. So I was born in Cape Town. I have a South African passport, and I have a European passport. And same with my friend. He was born in SA, and his parents were foreigners. So we didn't need visas. Ukraine, you don't need a visa to come here on most passports, not American, not European. South Africa, interestingly, you do need a visa. It's not hard to get it from Pretoria, but every time I had South African guests here, they needed to get the visa. So we came here, and we were just amazed. We were amazed at the creative spirit. We were amazed at the eating. The eating. I mean, you can't see below here, but put on a couple of kilos. No, I mean, I'm kind of the same, but I definitely put on a couple of kilos.
I remember when we were chatting long ago, Ronnie, when you actually were trying to encourage me to go over there to have a look at Kyiv and Ukraine, and you were waxing lyrical about it.
I encourage everyone.
But I remember,
I've probably hosted.
I'm going to get you into trouble here, especially if your wife is watching this. But I remember how you used to rave about the women in Ukraine.
Well, South Africa's also got a lot of beautiful women, but there's a lot of beautiful women in Ukraine too. Yeah. But in South Africa, there's beautiful people as well. Same here. There's a lot of handsome men. No one talks about the men, but there's a lot of handsome. I know for some reason the stereotype is not that at all.
Yeah.
But I had some friends come here last year for about most of the summer. We were filming for what you saw, and they are part of the film team, and they're like a gay couple. And people, again, the stereotypes, no, gay people in Ukraine, they'll get tarred and feathered. Such rubbish. There's a huge gay community here. It's a very multicultural city. Before the war, there's a big, for example, before the war, there's a big Pakistan community here in Kyiv. And now that's an interesting question. What are they doing here? They're in IT. They speak English. They had a lot of customer-facing roles because the Eastern European culture is maybe a bit more shy, less kind of customer engaging or customer facing. So a lot of Pakistani IT guys came here and love it. They love it here, And I don't know if they're still here now with the war, even though I do see, different cultures in the city. But my film team friends are amazed. They said the men are so handsome. I said, I always said that, but for some reason they just get a bad rap, And it's like, I mean, there's some handsome men here, absolutely, and it's like for some reason they're like neglected, So a shout out to all the handsome men of Kyiv and Ukraine. But it's a beautiful country. Physically, the country is spectacular. It's hard to compete against Africa. South Africa has to be like one of, if not the most beautiful land in the world. And I can't say I know South Africa like extensively, but from what I know about the Garden Route, the Midlands, and there's more to it. The Drakensberg, parts of Johannesburg,
Will you ever come back?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So we did come back for a part of the war because we didn't know where to go.
Right.
And my wife was lucky enough to have a visa because we were actually coming to my brother's wedding, which we couldn't get to because if you remember, at that time, there was that last spike in the pandemic madness, the Omicron, I think it was called. And then for a couple of weeks, all the flights got cancelled, so we couldn't get out. It was just a bit nuts. And we had a baby, and then the fear is if we got out somehow, we couldn't get back. And then like my mother-in-law would be stuck looking after our toddler for months. So it was a mad time again. That pandemic was mad, but my wife had the visa. So She had like a multiple entry visa because we actually thought we would come back a few times that year, in 2022 to visit and maybe a holiday. And then we landed up coming back, because of the war. And we had a lot of problems with visas because our son entered on his European passport. He's got Ukrainian passport and European passport. And he could only stay for 90 days under the law. And we just couldn't get an extension. And Duncan, you know me, I'm not like a lazy guy. And I'm not scared to write letters and call. And I'm always polite and professional. And I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm not an idiot. Did everything by the book. We couldn't get a visa. And it wasn't so easy to stay in South Africa. But then we wanted to get back to Europe because my wife was missing her family, and I wanted to get back to Kyiv. And we decided to come back. And we've been in Wrocław in Poland for over a year. Mm-hmm. And I take the train to Kyiv like every 5-6 weeks for about 2-3 weeks at a time. Last year summer I was here for about 2 months because we were shooting. And that was the film that you saw, that like kind of sizzle sample reel film, which is a project that has kind of kept me a little bit sane during this time because it's something meaningful and purposeful that we started before the war in 2018, because there was like this inspired vision by a bunch of South Africans that said, let's try and tell the story about this city of IT entrepreneurs. We start off with a project about IT entrepreneurs. I come from an IT background. I understand entrepreneurship, and we had a great starting point. Then the pandemic came, and we had to kind of press pause, like the whole world pressed pause. And then in January 2022, I was already booking air tickets, thinking, okay, we're back in business. And then, obviously, February later, on the 24th, universe told us that there were other plans for all of us, So we found a way to continue the story with Zoom interviews and then actually shooting in the city that summer. And we're just putting the last kind of finishing touches on the film. And it's turned out beautiful, but we have some challenges with it, is that there's now an abundance of projects about Ukraine. Most of them are war films. We didn't make a war film. The war acts as a catalyst for transformation. And of course, we have to talk about the war, but we didn't make a film about the war. We made a film about life, how people are continue to live. And it's very uplifting and tender, as per that teaser. But when you try and contact the distributor, there's another whole set of stereotypes now applying to this kind of category of film. People go, oh my God, another depressing film about the war in Ukraine. And I go, no, we don't have a depressing film about the war in Ukraine, but I can't get beyond that point.
Right.
Because that's the stereotype. It's going to be a heavy, depressing film about people dying. I go, I said, that's not what we did, but I just can't get them to even have a conversation for some reason.
Has the film got a name?
And currently it's called We Are Ukraine, but we don't know. Okay. If suddenly HBO said we want it, but change the name, we'll change the name. But I haven't had any calls, at this point from HBO. So
okay. You never know who's watching this podcast. You never know who's watching this podcast.
Exactly. But my entire film, I was about to say, Duncan, I can talk to you. I know you long enough. I know you'll laugh. I was about to say film career, but that would be an overstatement and it would be misguided. It's better to say like my film journey, because career sounds like it's career.
Well, I was looking. I was looking at your Wikipedia page, Ronnie, before this discussion today, and there are 24 movies listed there that you were involved in. I don't even know if that list is complete.
So you use the best language. 24 films that I've been involved with.
Yeah,
I never said these are my 24 films. I've always been involved.
Yeah,
it's a more humble language and it's more honest. I've written some stories, written some checks. I often drive the teams and lead the teams, but I'm not like the creative kind of visionary. I add to the vision. Mm-hmm. On the Ukraine project, I was the catalyst and the spark, but this team has brought a creative sense and artistry to it, and it's been a great team effort for sure. But I was the kind of spark that said, hey guys, can I get you some tickets and come to Kyiv in 2018 and let's explore a new story about IT entrepreneurs, and then it changed into just general entrepreneurs, and then it changed into how people have adapted to a new world, to a new life under war. I can just share with you, we're a bit all over the place, so I just want to try and conclude some of your questions. So how I got here, pretty innocent. People go traveling, love the place, beautiful city. When people ask me, how come I came to live here? I think that's, you kind of hinted at that. Maybe I can answer the question as I always answer, because it's quite an unusual answer. If I had to list, Duncan, the 5 things that I love about being here, I don't want to say living here, because I'm living in limbo and we kind of lost. Now I feel at home. But on the weekend, I'm going back to Poland. I'll come back probably end of August again. And when I mention train ride, this ain't Rovos Rail. And it's not a quick trip. It's about, this trip we had a delay. It was 23 hours in a sauna train. It was so hot. People were passing out on the train. Wow. And the mood on the train, Duncan, is intense. Again, you won't read about this. Before we were testing, before we went live, there's a lot of things that you don't see on the news. When the Children's Hospital and the Birth Hospital, 2 hospitals got hit 2 weeks ago, it made the news all over the world. Terrible terrorism. It's not even war, it's just terrorism. But what you don't see in the news, for example, are stories about those trains. Like, and who's on those trains? Take a guess.
Ordinary people.
No men are allowed to leave here. So who do you think's on those trains?
Women and children.
Women and children coming to see fathers, soldiers, husbands, and nobody talks on those trains. It's just exhausted looking people that are down. You know, so
I can't even imagine it.
Yeah, it's not like a rah-rah train. We're all going on a summer holiday. Remember that song from Cliff Richard?
Yes.
Showing my age. Showing my age for sure.
Mine too, I'm remembering that actually.
I wasn't a teenager. I mean, I was a lighty. I must have been like 7, 8, 9, or 10. And that song was, out, but showing my age for sure. So it's not we're all going on a summer holiday train. Yeah, those trains are, and they're long. They're not uncomfortable. They're not dirty. They're modern trains, but it's a long journey.
How far is Poland from Kyiv?
Well, from Kiev, from to the Polish border, 600 kilometers.
Oh, it's quite a long way.
Wrocław, it's about 1,000 kilometers.
Okay.
So I'm doing like 1,000 kilometer journey every other month, or every 6 weeks. But you have to take 2 trains. You have to take a train to the Polish border. Then you have to queue up on like an old communist. Remember, Poland, again, maybe just for the listeners, Poland was not in the Soviet Union. But Poland was communist. Not all communist countries were part of the Soviet Union. So they referred to a lot of those old, like, communist-style dwellings, like this train building, passport control. It's not an airport. It doesn't have any infrastructure that a Western traveler, or you're frozen, doesn't have any, like, there's no toilets there. There's no chairs. And there's men and women, and you have to stand there for 3-4 hours. I've stood there when it snowed. I've stood there when it rained, and everyone gets wet. There's nowhere to go. They're stuck under a tree. And now there was this heat wave across Europe, and people were like wiping the sweat off at night, at like 10 o'clock at night, and babies are crying, and it's hectic. It's hectic, And then you get onto the next train once you've crossed into Ukrainian airspace, train space, and that's another 11 or 10 hours, So the whole thing is like 20, 21 hours. We had a 2-hour delay. It took us about 23 hours. So the train ride, it's hellish. Not for, it's not, I wouldn't call it hellish, but it's not for everyone, not for sissies. But I'm from Africa. As Duncan, you mean, Africa's not for sissies, that old expression.
So what's keeping you going, Ronnie? What drives you? I know you've always been a guy who's full of passion. When you get involved in a project, you give it 110%. But this is out of your control. It's a situation that was not of your making. How do you actually stay positive and keep going day to day?
Duncan, that's a great question. I'm a happy, positive person, as you know, but for the last couple of years, I haven't been so happy, also positive. And to be now in Kyiv, there's so much sadness here. Not easy, eh? It's not easy. I've got friends I care about, family. We have our home here. I moved over a 10-year period, Duncan, all my personal things, and I'm quite the sentimental person. There is, like I look around here, there's bias, paraphernalia, there's stuff from material, there's stuff from all kinds of projects, failed projects, successful projects, different ventures. And this is where I feel at home. This was meant to be my happy place. If you can see on the camera, and you know me, I'm quite a pale guy. I like the long winters. Mm-hmm. I love the eating here. I was going to tell you the 5 things that when people ask me, because the stereotyping is so ridiculous. Maybe Hollywood has something to do with that, because when you see villains in movies, they're so often Ukrainian, or South African, interesting.
Yes.
And Ukraine, always the bad guys in movies. Then if you saw that Jason Statham film Beekeeper, it's one of his latest, but there was like a villain at the end who was from South Africa. Crazy. Like, why South Africa? What has South Africa done to the world? Why is Hollywood always showing bad people to come from South Africa and Ukraine?
Lethal Weapon. Remember Lethal Weapon with Mel Gibson?
Yeah.
The bad guys were Afrikaners.
Yeah, exactly. No, everybody remembers that. Yeah, exactly. But when I tell people the 5 points why I love it here, the first point is just not what you're expecting to hear. I love the laughter. People say, Ukraine, it's not a funny place. I said, you've never been there. What are you talking about? And I've hosted here over a long period, even before I was we'd bought an apartment here. So when I was coming here for chunks of time, when I said, hey, Duncan, come with me, you would have found so much inspiration for tech stories. And Duncan, I can take people on tech tours in Kyiv that are not something that you can get on the tour guide, because I've got some amazing access here. Mm-hmm. I've built up a network of some very cool, sometimes quirky, very funny entrepreneurial friends, because I come from an IT background. They all speak English, again, against the stereotype. Nobody speaks English. A lot of people don't speak English, but in my circle, most people I know speak English pretty well. Mm-hmm. They're very funny. So I take people to see different companies because I've got access. Some of the companies we've been to, you'll probably know the names. We took some guests just before the war started in January, when the pandemic was coming to an end and the Omicron thing kind of died down. I think it was last week in January, 2022. So literally would have been the last set of visitors I had. Some guests came. We went to Grammarly. Everybody knows Grammarly. It's Ukrainian business. Quite funny, a business around language coming from a foreign country.
I didn't know that.
English country. No, Grammarly. I'll tell you what you might know that is of Ukrainian origin and things that have been built in Ukraine. So like Ring.com was built here. It's all, I don't know if it's Ukrainian owned. It could be like American owned, but it's all from Ukraine.
Okay.
Everyone knows Redl, Spark, Clean My Mac.
Yes.
This huge business called Ajax, or as they say, Ajax. It's this home security system, big all over the world. That's a proper Ukrainian story.
Okay.
Jubal, I think it's the second biggest job site in the world. It's like Google Jobs, is Ukrainian. I'm just trying to think. PetCube is Ukrainian. They have these cameras, and you can send a treat to your pet while you're in the office and put a laser pointer and the cat jumps around. Wait, there's many stories here. I'm suddenly, like software development. There are companies like, what is it called? Global Logic, Luxoft, EPAM, which I think is one of the biggest.
Okay.
My wife worked at EPAM for many years. I think just over 5 years. EPAM is like, what is equivalent in South Africa? Like BB&D, I think, is a well-known big outsourcing firm. I'm involved in a software development business called PGO, and which is something that's in its fourth year, and I'm one of the team members.
So business is continuing
talent,
despite everything that's going on there.
It's actually a great story because you are TechCentral. And as I made that kind of funny comment, and how funny it was, but like this place is TechCentral.
Right.
In Europe, it is for sure. So PGO connects Ukrainian talent, Ukrainian software developers with companies abroad, some in the US, and obviously a lot out of South Africa because that's where we, know people. And Duncan, there's one thing that your listeners and if you ask the question to any company in any country, do you need software developers? What is the answer?
Ukraine.
No. I said, no, do you need software developers? What is the answer when you ask that question?
Oh, I'm not sure.
That everybody needs software developers.
Yes, of course.
I'm saying like it's the demand for software. It's like the demand for cybersecurity.
It's endless. Yes.
Sorry,
I misunderstood what you were asking.
So like maybe I was sorry, I'm gonna wipe my nose there. Maybe I just didn't come across clearly there. But I'm saying if you ask that question, like, do you need to eat? Everyone needs to eat. Like software developers, everybody needs software developers. And there's a shortage, and Ukraine is the second biggest software developing outsourcer after India. If you go to Google, and you can do this now, so it's not my opinion, it's like a fact, and type top 10 software outsourcing countries, India is number one, and number two is Ukraine. But people don't know that, Just for some perspective, India is 6 times the size of the action, So India is a lot bigger. But over the years, when I'd met a lot of foreigners here, and that wasn't me having guests here, that was just meeting foreigners here in IT companies through mutual friends, they often would talk about they've changed their software partners from one country to come to Ukraine. And their reasons were always very interesting because Ukraine was a bit more expensive than India. I think it's maybe 20% more. But they were prepared to pay that premium to come to Ukraine over another outsourcing destination. And some of the reasons were really fascinating. One of the reasons is culturally, they like the fact that the Eastern European culture is very straightforward. So if your software is rubbish, often a Ukrainian guy, it could do with a little bit of finesse and some softness. But they say, Duncan, your software is really bad. Thanks. It's pretty direct, whereas they said in other countries, sometimes, we never get told that. Everything was always good. Right. So Ukrainians are quite straightforward, and they like that. They like the fact that I think in Ukraine, the software IT degree is 5 years versus a 3-year degree in India. So there was a higher quality of skill here. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
And then there's cultural reasons for an American or a European person to come to Kyiv or Odessa or Lviv or Dnipro. It didn't feel that foreign to them. They'd stay at a Radisson or the Hilton, they'd eat a burger, have sushi. Yeah. The culture felt very westernized, and people felt right at home here.
Okay.
But I'll tell you the reasons, so laughter was one of the big reasons, that people just are funny here. People say, well, they're not funny. Like I said, you've never been there. Second reason is, the city is beautiful. It's like a postcard wherever you turn. It's not a perfect city. A lot of it is old. Do you know how old the city is?
I don't.
Just take a guess.
1,000 years?
No, close. I think it's 1,600 years.
Okay.
There's the city that the Vikings discovered, the Kiev and Rus, the Vikings discovered this place. From what if I remember what I've been taught correctly. So, it's beautiful. The eating. And I don't just mean Ukrainian food. I mean the burgers here. You'd think you're in LA or something.
Really?
Wow. the burgers, the Italian food.
When this war eventually ends, I'm going to have to come over there and have a burger with you, Ronnie.
Well, if you came in the war zone, you during the war,
yeah,
Duncan, you would have enough stories to tell, on your media platform.
You've put me off that train journey.
You'd get by. It's not the end of the world. You're online on the train, you can do your stuff. I just wouldn't do it in the summer. The summer, in the winter, it's more cozy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hot on the train.
Do you stay in contact with any of the guys from the old days? We had David Frankel on our show, TCS Legends, a few months ago. Do you still chat to David? What about some of the other guys?
I don't chat to many people, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think the pandemic also, changed a lot in the world. A lot of people lost contact. I'm sure you relate to what I'm saying. Most people, everybody kind of
drifted,
disappeared for a couple of years. I don't know, And then the war. I don't know much about Charlie Munger, but something popped up on, I think, a Google search or something, just by random, and he said something: never tell people your problems, because he said 90% of them don't care, and the other 10% are glad you got those problems. That was a Charlie Munger quote. Seems pretty accurate, because I've always been like a funny guy, and in the last years, Duncan, I've been a bit of a sad guy, and seems like people don't like a sad guy, and a lot of people just stop talking to me.
People like to laugh.
I don't know. I'm still funny. But a lot of people just stopped talking to me, maybe because they were tired of hearing about the war.
Did you give up the stand-up routine entirely?
Well, now we're doing sit-down, me and you. But you can go, Duncan, to stand-up comedy now in Kyiv, in the war. And a lot of comics show up because it's like a bomb shelter, and there's an instant audience. Just pick up a mic and start jamming.
So you've done that?
Yeah. No, I haven't done that, but I've been invited to a couple of stand-up comedy underground gigs.
Right.
During the war. I just to finish, the 5 points. So
yes,
the laughter, the beauty. The city is just magnificent. The quirkiness. I'm quite a quirky individual. It's a very quirky place. Reminds me of Greenwich Village, the city. The eating, the tech scene, the creative scene. Ukraine was becoming a film destination before the pandemic. Yeah. There wasn't a month that went by where you didn't see some area of the city shut down by a Hollywood production. And every other week, maybe every other second week, there was some local news. Tom Cruise was in town one day. They saw him on the train, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were jamming, some pub, and you go, wow, it was happening. Every other week, something was going down in the city. And there were loyal diehards that ever since I discovered this place kept coming here, like Depeche Mode. There wasn't a winter where Depeche Mode, there's always advertising. Remember, we got off the plane, me and Jacques, we drove into the city in a taxi, and I said, hey, Depeche Mode are playing in Kyiv. I love Depeche Mode. This is going to be a cool adventure, And every year, there was always Depeche Mode.
Amazing.
And then the pandemic was the end of that.
Yeah.
I mean, for all cities.
Yeah.
And then the war was also, the end of any concerts. And other reasons, let's sum that part up. I mean, the city is safe. I never heard of London is more dangerous than Kyiv. Obviously,
apart from the Russians.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously now there's a whole different. There's an existential crisis, But the city is safe. Duncan, I prepared some anecdotes. I wanted to just be respectful to your.
Please go ahead.
But I mean, one of the anecdotes, because I am still someone who loves laughter. So I never was conscious, Duncan, of crime issues in Ukraine, in Kyiv. I never was it. But I read that crime in Kyiv is at an all-time low. I never knew it was even an issue. but it's at a record low. So that raises the question, like, how come it's at a record low? And the reason is because of the war. There's just no tolerance for crime. If I steal your phone, I just get shot on the spot. So nobody does crime. They're fighting a war. No one's got time to arrest you, go to court, plead the case out. You steal something, they just shoot you. You go to jail for 100 years. There's no question, because there's no time for it.
Yeah.
So nobody is messing around now. I thought it was quite a funny story, you know. Some other funny stories, there's many funny stories with the war. I mean, they're sad funny, but one of them is an old, it's not a Ukrainian joke. It's probably an American stand-up comic. But you asked it earlier when we were testing and that, like, what do you do if there's an incoming missile? You know, you can go to the bomb shelter. Depends. You have an app. So my mother-in-law once, and this is a funny story. The app told her that the missile was coming to Kyiv in 6 minutes. So she said, let me just get down to the lobby and I can have a quick coffee because there's a coffee machine she likes. And then she's still got 2 minutes to get to the bomb shelter. So she worked out from the app that she could get down, have a quick coffee, and then say goodbye and still get to the bomb shelter. like Hollywood can't write scripts that crazy. It's a mad story. It's just mad. But that's the new reality.
Yeah.
You know, that is the new reality. But there's that old stand-up comic joke, like, what do you do? You know, if a nuclear weapon is getting sent to Ukraine, which is one of the global fears, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's an unfounded fear.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, not a fact. I don't believe the Russians would ever do that, because that would
be the end of the Russians.
I think so. I think it will be the end of the world if we go into a nuclear war. I don't know. So, and people who know Russians say they are too cowardly to do that. I don't know if that's.
What is what is the first thing you think you're going to do when the war is finally over?
I don't know. Dance for 24 hours. Is that cliched?
Sorry, say that again?
Is that a cliche? Like, we'll dance in the streets for 24 hours?
Yeah.
You know, some people say the war will never be over. Ukraine and Israel. Ukraine is like the next Israel.
Right.
Now that the threat is real, it'll never go away. You know, the war could stop tomorrow and come back in a year. You know, it's not a Putin problem. It's a regime problem. If Putin died tomorrow, again, this is an opinion.
Sure.
It's an opinion that I buy into, you know. But they say if Putin dies tomorrow, some other crazy person will take his place, you know, or her place. And it doesn't have to be a man, you know.
Yeah.
But if you watch some of these Russian propagandists on their television channels, they're often on Twitter and that, it's like a crazy ideology, you know.
What is the view in Ukraine, and what's your view of what's happening in America now with Trump and a possible second Trump presidency? Would that be is the view in Ukraine that would be a disaster?
And that's a question that affects the whole world, because every person on the planet, whether they are conscious of it or not, has a relationship with America through movies, fast food, fashion, iPhones, technology. We don't have relationships with Argentina or Uganda or New Zealand, but everyone is connected to America. America, what do they say? If America gets the flu, we all get a cold or something like that, you know? So America's well-being has a huge ripple effect on the world. And of course, in Ukraine, who leads America is of significance, because if the next president throws Ukraine under the bus, I mean, that's just going to be a tragedy, you know? And it's already a tragedy. So, you know, if it gets worse, if Ukraine is abandoned, it's of great concern here. On the train ride in last week, we were online the whole time. Everyone was nobody slept on that train. I don't just sleep on the train really, but there's a reason why everyone was awake on that train. You know what happened last week, Monday? They announced in America, J.D. Vance
Yes.
as the vice president.
Yes.
And it was on everybody's phones on the train. And I could see people just like shrugging, like, you know, they're not Americans, but like I said, what happens there has a bearing here. And he has said he doesn't care about Ukraine.
Oh, really?
It's on all the news. J.D.
Okay.
Vance does not care about Ukraine. That's a fact. They got like snippets of him saying, I don't care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other.
Oh.
Says, you know. So they are concerned. But it's out of everybody's control. Whoever is the president of America, they will have to deal with Ukraine somehow, you know. Let's hope they deal with Ukraine favorably.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know.
Yeah.
But Duncan, there is a very sad discussion here that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the getting worse, that they are more vulnerable in like 4 months' time. It's not long to go, November 5th. So maybe in 4 months' time, they're even more vulnerable because their biggest partner has, you know, closed the tap, you know.
It's very concerning.
So I don't know. Just to answer some of your previous questions. So, yeah, I am in touch, you know, with Dave, you know, obviously with Saki. Saki's also part of the PGO team. And I'm now in touch with some new South Africans that run the PGO team, Dimitri and Nick, you know, very, very good, humble young guys that have been to Kyiv in the second year of the pandemic. My role then was to introduce them to some really cool and solid, like, programming houses here. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Duncan, this is also an interesting fact for your listeners. The last time I checked the data, there's about 20,000 software developers in South Africa. I think, plus minus. Maybe someone can correct us. But that was a couple of years ago. I don't think it would have changed too much. I know there's a bigger skill shortage than ever, because I know through the PGO research that everybody's just needing developers. And in Ukraine, I think there was 250,000 software developers.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I think in India it's like 6 times the size, so there's probably
Millions.
a couple of million software developers, you know. Yeah, so that shows you the kind of the significance of the brains trust here. Yeah. Yeah, so I am in touch with, you know, a few folk from
your brother, is he do you
He's been to Kyiv many times.
Is he still in South Africa?
Been to Kyiv. He's still in South Africa. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. He's been to Kyiv many times. One of my best memories with him was, I'm not as you know, Doug, I'm not a sporty person, but him and his older son, Jude, who's a lovely guy. He's now an adult. He's 22, 23. They came here they're both Liverpool freaks. They came here for when Liverpool played Real Madrid.
Oh, yeah.
In, what's it called? I think it's called Champions
League.
Not Euro Cup. Champions League. I'm not a sporty guy.
Me neither,
and I've never been to a football match, yet alone like a big ass football match, like a major final with, like, I think there was 70 or 80,000 people in the stadium. It was capacity, and I've never seen the city like that. And my brother, who's been to many events, said he's never seen an event like that.
Wow.
One of the things that is unusual about the cities at the stadium is it's smack in the city centre. Remember, for the South African World Cup, you had to take a bus to get to the main stadium, and here you just walk to the city. You know, that's smack in the city. And because of that, they had closed all the streets down and made like a Mardi Gras. There was never a story or an incident about a mugging. The city just delivered a world-class event without incident. Maybe 100,000 people came through the city that weekend, and everybody was amazed. They were amazed. I unfortunately invested Motion Liverpool, had no clue what I was doing, never doing it again. I started crying when they lost. I said, I'm not a soccer fan. But everybody was, 70% of the audience, the crowd, was there for Liverpool.
Okay.
And when they lost, I also started like getting sad. I said, I didn't even know anything about soccer, but it was so like emotional. Everybody went home. If they had won, it would have been an all-night party. Nobody said a word. Everyone just went to sleep, and that was the end of the night. There was no all-night party. But what an experience, what an experience. Was that 2018?
Is your brother still a professional bridge player, by the way?
Yeah, he is. He's the South African champion.
Okay.
And he's played in many tournaments around the world. And I think that one day he'll be the world champion.
Okay.
He's driven by an incredible passion for it. He doesn't stop. He's got the ability to play and I think sponsor the team, if I'm not mistaken. And they are Springboks. They are Springbok bridge players.
Mm.
And
let's get him on the show sometime and have a chat with him about it, actually. Be good to chat to Alan. I haven't spoken to him for probably 25 years. Yeah.
No, he's a very bright guy. I mean, very modest. He's not like a flashy liver. He's a very down to earth guy.
Mm.
Yeah, and he's also been around. He's done a lot of things.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to talk to, but he's kind of under the radar. He's not really.
Sure.
He's never really in the news or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's just getting on. He's got 4 kids. Keeps him busy.
Okay.
Runs around for a big part of the year with bridge tournaments. Takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay. But Ronnie, are there any specific questions you wanted to ask?
I know you've got some errands to run, and we could talk all afternoon and reminisce about the old days, etc., etc. I thought. Let me ask you a question to conclude the discussion today. I was trying to think as we were talking today what I could ask you as a concluding question, but I thought let's go back to your movies. It's been the passion that's been in your life for decades, and I thought maybe let me ask you what your 3 favorite movies are that you've been involved in over the years and why.
Well, I'd have to say the current project only because. It is so important, and we've done such a beautiful job in it. Whether anyone sees it or not, I don't know. It's becoming increasingly difficult for indie filmmakers to find distribution. And then, as I mentioned earlier, films about Ukraine, there's so many of them being made.
Mm.
If you look on Amazon's transactional VOD marketplace, there's like a dozen films that no one's watching. It's like a film graveyard, and we don't want to put the film on there because then it just sits there and you pay $20 to watch it and maybe 3 people will watch it and that's it. So it's but I'd have to put the current project obviously material because it's that was a huge turning point. And then I'd have to put a few in that last third spot because I couldn't choose. There was the first film, Purpose, which started it all. There was Jerusalem, which I played a smaller role in.
That was a great movie.
That was a great project. There was a film called Via, which I played a very small role in, but it led to some great things for some really good people. There was Beyond the River, which. I
loved that movie. That was great. That was a great movie.
Yeah. Which was also a purposeful vision from Garth, from Heartlines.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few. If I had a couple of whiskeys, I'm not a drinker, but if I did have, I'd even put Crazy Monkey in there. Not because it's our best work.
Yeah.
But because it was so crazy, and that was just a detour into fun and craziness.
Yeah.
There was no great purpose to it. Since Material, we've been trying to find projects that have some social relevance,
Yes.
But Duncan, I think, and I know everyone who knows me says, you always say that, but I think I'm done.
With movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done with a lot of things because of what's happened.
Yeah.
I help on the PGO journey. It doesn't keep me that busy. I mentor some people. I try to help us with a few customer engagements. I don't give it an abundance of time, some time, but not a lot. It's an inspiring new venture. It's in its 4th year. I think I mentioned that. But I don't have like a full-time work focus. I became a dad, almost 4 years ago, and I enjoy being a dad. It kind of woke up something in me that I didn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I ever planned to be a father. I've always been a bit on my own planet. But my wife and I had this beautiful boy. His name is David, or as they say in the West, David.
Mm-hmm.
And he speaks 3 languages. Speaks fluent English, fluent Ukrainian, and he speaks Polish. He's in a Polish kindergarten. We don't know what he's talking about after school. And he's very funny, and he's kind of very naughty. He likes pranks, like his dad. He likes to pull pranks. And then he says, "I'm just joking." How a 3.5-year-old knows what a prank is and has a sense of humor around it. Quite funny. But he likes to make jokes and stuff, hide in the cupboard and go boo, It's quite a character,
Like father, like son.
Thank God he doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Thank God he doesn't know about the war. He was here when the war started, but he doesn't know about a bombshell,
Okay.
Air raid siren.
Right.
And maybe I can leave your listeners with a note that whether you are a parent or not, we all have parents or had parents. We all know what it means to have a parent. We all come from somebody. And Duncan, I was in a very fortunate position that I had the capacity to embrace parenthood. I think everyone has the capacity to love, but not everybody has the time to embrace that. Like, for example, if you are a single parent working in McDonald's and you have 2 kids, it's very difficult to go home and be like this hands-on, bubbly parent. If you're working a 10, 12-hour shift for minimum wage. And sadly, so many people in the world are in that situation. And you've got to just be so respectful to people that are struggling to raise their children in very difficult economic conditions. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine now throwing a war on top of that? If you ever remember that movie, Life is Beautiful, that from like 20, 30 years ago, the Italian
Very
film.
Good movie. Yeah.
World War II, beautiful. Won the Oscar for best film. What was his name? Roberto Benigni, if I remember. Beautiful film.
Forget.
People are doing that here, Duncan, every day. They're trying to create an environment for their kids, that somehow they can live with the war. So I was in a very privileged position that I had the capacity, the time to embrace parenthood. And I don't know where this love came from. It's like a love machine switched on inside. And I love seeing my boy. And when I go back at the end of the week, see my wife, I'm excited to see her. But when that little boy sees me, like I'm like God to him, and my wife, like we are his gods, and I can't wait to see him again, so. But I'm lucky that I'm a work from home dad, and I'm a hands-on dad, even though I come to Kyiv, but I'll be back in a week, and I'm with him every day. I fetch him from school. We go to the park together every day for 2-3 hours, and we play with other kids. Don't know what he's talking about in Polish, I mean, I know some words by now, but you can ramble off in Polish.
Can teach you all the swear words.
I don't know about swear words at that age, but yeah, exactly. But I'm not like working a 12-hour shift for minimum wage, and I'm able to embrace that beauty and that challenge and that exhaustion of being a parent. It's not all fun and games. We're also so tired all the time.
Yeah.
But we have the ability to love and nurture. Of course, there's no guarantee he's going to be a champion. Could be a total disaster. We don't know. I know from living, for over 50 years that, I've got friends that have grown-up kids, and my parents have got friends that have kids, and sometimes you can do everything right, and your kid becomes a drug addict or a criminal or something. Even if you do everything right, your kid can still go off in a bad direction, and you can suddenly go grey overnight and never sleep again if you're a caring parent. Mm-hmm. So there's no guarantee that we do everything right, that our kid turns out to be, a contributing member to society. But we're certainly wanting to do a good job so that he, like if he became a doctor, we would be thrilled. Because Duncan, you've probably seen as much as I've seen. Both of us have been around the block. And we are living in a very selfish world, where people admire influencers more than they admire doctors. There's something messed up about that. Maybe I shouldn't be judging, but I would say the world needs more doctors and teachers and writers and poets and chefs than they need social media gurus.
And politicians.
That's just my, that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And if our little boy never grows up with a phone, yes, I'd be happy. Because I don't think it's doing kids any good. He's still a toddler.
Yeah. But
like the teenagers, you go out anywhere in the world and everyone's just glued to their phones. And you just go, the message is, I became a dad, and to embrace fatherhood, parenthood, as much as it is a full-time job, I feel very lucky that I can embrace it for all its joys and frustrations, because there's a lot of nights you don't sleep, especially small baby. But it's something I never knew about, Duncan, until I became a parent. And this love machine switched on. And
it sounds to me like that's what's getting you through this horrible war.
My wife, our boy, the film, friends, even you, Duncan. The fact that you reached out to me, I was very touched and flattered. If you don't mind having a war refugee, I'm officially a war refugee in Poland. Sounds bizarre. Duncan, if 25 years ago I said, I just got a fortune cookie and it said in 25 years you're going to be a war refugee in Poland, I would say, Duncan, what are you smoking? But that is my current status. Do you have a status? Some people are CEOs, some people are whatever, head chef. I'm war refugee. But
Ronnie,
we can still laugh.
It's been very good to chat to you, and I'm glad you still got your passion. I hope you keep it despite Putin's craziness, and I hope the war doesn't go on much longer, and that things can get back to normal, and you can get back to a normal life of building businesses and making movies and doing whatever you're passionate about, because I can see that this war has taken it out of you, and I'm sure it's taken it out of millions of your fellow countrymen in Ukraine. So I hope it ends soon, and I hope you get back on track, Ronnie, and hold on tight, and I'm sure brighter days are ahead.
Hey, Duncan, could we maybe, just because I still have, I'm just looking at the time, I can spare a couple minutes. There's something which I think, again, because of my just unique circumstances, and something that your listeners and you understand and I understand, is coming from South Africa. South Africans carry a heavy load. No other country do people sit around a dinner table and talk about load shedding schedules. Is it safe to drive home now? Is the rand going to drop? Are we going to immigrate? These are not discussions in Netherlands, in America, in England, in Australia. They're not. In where are the other popular places that people are immigrating to Valencia in Spain, to Portugal, I know there's a lot of immigration to these places.
Yeah.
To Canada. People aren't sitting around talking about, oh, did you hear so-and-so got attacked last night in their home, or the rand dropped, or load shedding. I believe, though, although am I right, Duncan, the mood that I sense from SA is a lot better of late, which is good.
Since the election, things have turned, and I think the bad elements in the ANC have been excised from the party, or some of the bad elements. Yeah. And this GNU, it seems that we're kind of in the right direction. Touch wood, we're kind of heading in the right direction again. But it's fragile. It's fragile.
Yeah, it's all fragile. If a nuclear war starts here, I might have to come and sleep on your couch, because it could be that SA is the safest place in the world. It's quite funny there. But, South Africans and anyone who's listening, who either left SA or is in SA, I imagine most of your listeners are in SA.
Yeah.
South Africans carry a heavy load. It's unusual. And now Ukrainians are carrying this heavy load as well. Because to wake up and wonder if there's going to be a missile strike, it's just, it's crazy. Now there's load shedding, the currency's dropping, all the things, We don't have a violent crime problem, but we have an incoming missile problem, And there is that old...
Definitely the missile.
I mean, SA sadly has statistics for a country at war. The murder rate has gone up in the last year. And it's disturbing, But there is no incoming missiles.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a South African crime problem than incoming, zircon. I mean, just the names, zircon, hypersonic. I mean, it just sounds evil.
Yeah.
I don't need the zircon or the Kinjal missile. I mean, the names, it's just the names. And everyone's a missile expert here. The size of the missile, it's like a standing joke. Last Monday, what was that one meme? The whole world was a cybersecurity expert, and now we're all an American presidential expert. Everybody's got an opinion on that. Yeah. But I still didn't finish that joke. It's not my joke. But there is a joke like what do you do if there is an incoming big missile coming to Kyiv or anywhere in Ukraine? And there was that old anecdote from America that says you have to find a very big, thick steel desk. You get under that desk and you pull your knees up really tight to your chest. And you take a deep breath and you stick your head between your legs and you kiss your ass goodbye. What else? If they send a nuclear weapon here, I don't even know a bombshell is going to cut it. So you got to kiss your ass goodbye. So So
Ronnie, it's probably a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for chatting to our audience, chatting to me, chatting to the TechCentral audience today. It's been good to catch up, and I'm sure we'll meet again in person at some point in the coming years. And if the war ends, I will definitely make a plan to come over there and visit and check out this amazing city you're talking about.
If you come in the war, I can guarantee you a very good rate at a hotel. Excellent.
Okay.
So you can stay with me, but I'm saying if you wanted your own spot, you can get like a whole presidential suite for like $50 a month. No, it's not true. It's not true. The hotels are actually still pretty busy. In Kyiv, a lot of foreign correspondents, a lot of international, like politician people here, peacekeepers, UN people, missionaries. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of English-speaking people in the city that are just here to help.
Mm-hmm. Ronnie, thank you so much for your time, and stay safe, most importantly, and good luck with everything that's to come.
Thanks. As they say here, Slava Ukraini, and Slava Ukraini, sorry, and thanks. If I was a bit emotional, it was just not an easy.
No, understood fully.
Time. Not an easy time.
Ronnie, thank you so much
for putting up with sad war refugee guy.
Anytime, Ronnie. Anytime.
Yeah, but thanks.
All the best.
And
Take care.
I'm sure we'll. Bye bye.